Before we get started, I just wanted to say, before I became president, I actually led the outreach committee for 6 years, and it was just one of the most immense pleasures I ever had. There was a lot of hard work with it, but the joy of seeing people's reactions and hearing their reactions when they looked at Saturn for the first time was just immeasurable. It was something that drove me. And I remember the first time I went to an outreach event. Debbie Moran, who at the time was our outreach coordinator, sent a request out to the club and said, "Hey, I'm looking for people to help out with an outreach event that I have for a group of Girl Scouts." And I thought, okay, well, certainly I could do this. It's not going to be too much of a problem. And as we got closer to the event, I thought, geez, I'm getting nervous. What am I, what am I going to do? What am I going to point my telescope at? What am I going to talk about? And I found that my worries and concerns were completely unwarranted. From the moment I brought my telescope out and the Girl Scouts took a look through the telescopes and the responses that I got, like I'd mentioned earlier, I was hooked. There was nothing that could have stopped me from doing more of these outreach events. And, it's been an immense pleasure to get back to doing outreach events post-COVID. So, hopefully we'll be able to start doing many, many more of these types of outreach events and introducing more and more people who've never had the opportunity to look through a telescope to our wonderful hobby. So with that, I would like to introduce our program director, Mr. Don Selly, who's going to then introduce our panel.
Thank you, Joe. I'm glad you gave us a little bit of your personal background. When I put the meeting notice together, I'm always trying to make it kind of a public available. In other words, I want to make sure that whatever I say, comes across as being professional, et cetera. Outreach and this program we've done this for the last several years is one of the things I really get excited about, like Joe. When I first got involved in astronomy, and I said this in very bland words in the meeting notice, I got really pumped up about astronomy, and my family put up with me for a little while, and then it was Debbie Moran again. Said to me, you need to come out to an outreach event, and it was awesome. I volunteered at the George as well, so. To me, this is one of the best things that HAS does, and my personal recommendation is to those of you who are new to amateur astronomy, new to HAS, by all means, get involved in outreach. At least go to an outreach event or two, see what it's all about. I think you will find that it's the quickest and best way that you can learn about astronomy. From others that have been doing it for a while. You will get an immense joy out of showing kids the night sky. And for me, it was actually an 88-year-old grandmother who looked through a telescope for the first time, and her reaction was amazing. And at the same time, you're going to make relationships with other people in HAS. Well, which is a good way for you to become part of the community, astronomy community in the Houston area. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Dan Roy is the chairperson of the HAS Education and Outreach Committee now. He took over a couple of years ago, and in this capacity, Dan organizes and outreach events for HAS, and he does support for other people who are also doing outreach. Several years ago, Dan and his wife, Rebecca, established Astronomy in the Park outreach. It's a program at Rustic Oaks Park in League City. The program's been going on rain or shine, regardless of other conditions, and it's been a really big hit. Both Dan and Rebecca were awarded the Texas Star Party Omega Centauri Award, which recognizes them for their contributions to public astronomy outreach, mainly on the basis of the success of this astronomy in the park. Amelia Goldberg. If you've been around HAS for any length of time, you already know Steve and Amelia. The both of them are very long time. They're very welcome long-term members of HAS, and they've been active in outreach. I've done a number of outreach events with them, and they do any opportunity that they have available. They're either doing an HAS event or they're doing something at the George Observatory. Amelia is very recognizable at outreach events with her pink telescope, and I'm sure she'll tell us an awful lot about that. Both Steve and Amelia, quite a number of years ago, also were recipients of the Omega Centauri Award from TSP. Jeff Lepp, many of you may not know Jeff. Jeff's been a member of HAS for quite a while. But he's kind of focused on astro imaging. But all through his tenure as an amateur astronomer, though, he's also done outreach. Jeff started astronomy when he took an elective class in college back in the 80s. And he acquired his first telescope during the drought of 2011 when it was clear almost every night, and he quickly became interested in astrophotography. He joined FBAC in 2013 and has been very active in supporting the outreach that they do both at the George and the Astronomy on Wheels program. Jeff's also done a lot with HAS. He's a member of HAS. When COVID-19 pandemic came along, it looked like it was going to shut the George Observatory down. Jeff was one of the key members who adapted the outreach program down there to use electronic assisted astronomy to be able to show the public what was in the eyepiece through a camera and a computer monitor. And it's just really been very successful, and it's continuing down there now. Don Adams, he's a relatively new member of HAS, though he's had a lifelong interest in astronomy, basically from growing up in the West Texas town of Wink. His dad bought a telescope for the family, and that's all it took. The skies were very dark back then, and he became fascinated in the stars. Recently, Don joined HAS, and actually his interest in astronomy boiled over, and he actually has led him to organize a new regular outreach event at the John Paul Landing Park in Cypress, Texas, which is also held monthly, and I'm sure Don will tell us quite a bit about that. So without further ado, I'd turn this over to Dan Roy, and we'll take it away, Dan.
Okay, Joe, go for it. Now, I have a request here. We have never canceled Astronomy in the Park, even when Rebecca here was undergoing cancer surgery. Now, she insisted I go and do it by myself, but we never cancel. That's a point of honor for us. But I'm showing this for a very specific reason. People queue at our telescopes for 20 minutes, and then they had 20 seconds at the eyepiece. We must leave them with something more tangible, but a fleeting memory. So when we do Astronomy in the Park, we bring all sorts of documents that they can bring home. We print out things that we get from the Astronomical League. We have a lot of old magazines from space telescopes and astronomy and other that we share, and we insist that they take it because we don't want to take it back home. Okay? It's heavy. And we also have computers, and in those computers we display various free software, such as, of course, Stellarium and Moon Atlas. But you also have stuff that displays beautiful images that the kids love to watch, WST and HST. So I would really appreciate if whenever you do a outreach, you do your best to make sure that you do not cancel. Now, of course, we are blessed at League City with this little shelter here. Not every outreach will have this possibility. And of course, on top of that, since Rebecca here is Mexican, we can do it in
Spanish?
2 languages. Yeah. I have to be careful when I say that, because one time I received a nasty message saying, how dare you say you're French and your wife is Mexican? You know, that is offending to us. Well, do I really have to tell you I'm French, guys? I just opened my map. That's it. So anyway, next one. Yeah, and that's another thing that we do. We have this 100 millimeter that Rebecca is always womaning. And what I do when it rains, I put a picture of the moon or a poster of Mars in the back of our van, and she's in the shelter, and we look at that poster through the telescope, and you can see the sign here, touch me. That is because it breaks my heart when I have to tell the kids, don't touch, because I just spent 10 minutes aligning the scope and I don't want some kid to bump it out on alignment. But with this, it's just, as you can see, an Altaz and with 2 little controls. And the kids love it. And it's wonderful to see that, they put the thing in the viewfinder and then they center it, and they have learned something. Next. Now, of course, there are some really cute stories. Joe was mentioning how addictive this thing can be, and I absolutely agree. I mean, when you see that kind of stuff, you get addicted to the joy of having children. Maybe you've planted a seed here. Next. And of course, you get rewarded by some thank you notes, and we used to put them on the fridge, but between those kids and
my grandkids.
The grandkids, yeah, it's getting to be too much. We need a bigger fridge. Next. Now, my favorite outreach is this one. This is the United Space School, and it was an organization. I'm on the board of it, called the Foundation for International Space Education, and we bring 50 of the most brilliant kids from 20 countries to this area. And we have classes at the University of Houston at Clear Lake. We talk to NASA scientists and engineers. They have a very intense 2 weeks class by which they put together a mission to Mars. Remarkable kids and a wonderful program. And when I think of it, I'm basically working full time on all that stuff, not only for HAS, but for other causes as well. And I absolutely love it. 45 years ago, I joined the most advanced scientific and technical country on Earth. I will do the best I can to keep it that way in the few years I have left. Next. And of course, why we do this is a personal issue, but I want you to have a look at this. Look at the expression on the face of this young woman, an alumni, by the way, of United Space School, which was funded by George Abbey, former JSC director. Look at her face when she is listening to Amelia, telling her about Astrea. And of course, this is the kind of outreach person who doesn't need any introduction. Next.
It's a great transition. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate the wonderful stories
Joe,
there. Yes.
Want to shout out to Dan. I'm a retired pulmonologist. In 2018, I had contacted Miss Dan, and he told me to come to his League City. Then what happened was COVID interrupted my practice. So I retired 2 years ago. I resumed going back. So I believe he worked in India for a while. He likes the Indian snack, samosa.
Who doesn't like samosas? Yes.
Now I bought a new telescope, SCT-8, and I'm getting back to astronomy slowly. So I think I met Joe at the picnic a couple of months ago.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Dr. Chandra.
Appreciate that story. And thank you, Dan, for the wonderful inspiration, everything that you're doing with astronomy in the park and all the other outreach events that you and Rebecca participate in. So I appreciate that story. Okay. And next we'll transition over to Amelia Goldberg. So I've done a lot of outreach events with Amelia and her husband, Steve. And I will say that I've probably learned more about astronomy doing outreach events with Steve and Amelia and some of the other folks that are here than I would have any other opportunity, whether I was out there with books or my own telescopes and whatnot. So I owe her a huge debt of gratitude for everything she's done for us and for the community at large, because I venture to guess she's had thousands and thousands of people look through her telescope. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Amelia. And Amelia, what I'll do is go ahead and give you slide control.
Thank you, Joe.
Bear with me 1 second here. There you go.
HAS does outreach anywhere and everywhere. When I finished reworking my pink outreach telescope in 2015, I decided that I was going to keep a journal of every outreach event that I took her to. And so I was going to include photos and a short write-up for each event. So tonight, I want to share with you some of the highlights from my journal. First of all, St. Cecilia Catholic School. Now notice that this is astronomy night, not science night like most schools do, but this was strictly devoted to astronomy. And these people came out prepared to spend the entire evening out there. You can see blankets and chairs everywhere. Here's my setup here. And this is Jim King over here. We actually had 8 HAS volunteers out that night with 5 telescopes. Excuse me. We were the entertainment for a nighttime wedding. The couple got engaged at the George Observatory, and so they wanted astronomy to be part of their wedding. After looking through my telescope, the bride yelled out to her mom, "Hey, Mom, you got to come over here and see this girly telescope." Nottingham Elementary School on a cloudy night. Well, we don't let the clouds shut us down. We have what we call a petting zoo, where the kids can touch the telescope, they can move it about. And these young boys just really got a kick at looking at themselves in the primary mirror. My daughter had made me this hand puppet star so that I can interact with the little tiny kids, like this cute little girl, while carrying on a conversation with their parents. We've done solar observing at the Contemporary Arts Museum. We had 7 HAS volunteers out that day with 6 telescopes. Joe got the Houston Chronicle to advertise a couple of our summer events, like this one for the 50th anniversary of the moon landings. We had 15 volunteers out there that night. Here's Craig Lamison over here with his setup. And I'd like you to look at all these people. They were everywhere. We counted that 650 people looked through my telescope alone, and we had 9 other telescopes out there that night. We always got a big draw when we go to Discovery Green. It's not unusual to have 400, 600 plus people every time we go out there. It's one of my favorite places to do outreach. We do outreach at the dark site. We've hosted Western Academy out there a few times and other groups, Girl Scouts and whatnot. This night, here's Jim King over here. The kids always come out with a list of objects that they're supposed to look at, and they have a list that they check off once they've seen them. This little boy over here and his dad had brought their own telescope out, and he would come over and look to see what I was looking at. And then he would look through my telrad here to see where I was pointed. And then he'd run over to his telescope and find the object and yell out to his friends, "Hey, I've got it over here too." River Oaks Elementary School. This was a dad's club campout on a cloudy night. Joe Califf and Jim King were there also. We hung a picture of the moon up here on the wall, and then we aimed my telescope at it. Joe aimed his telescope down the hallway onto a locker that had a number on it. And Jim had some constellation and moon activities to share with the kids. Raven Tower. This really was a fun night. We were on a rooftop of a building, 5 stories up, overlooking the downtown Houston skyline. What a way to showcase the moon, Saturn, and Jupiter. Joe was there. Bram Wiseman was also there with their telescopes. So it was a little crowded up on top of this rooftop, and they could only let about, a dozen or so people up at any one time. But when we left at midnight, over 100 people had looked through our telescopes. This really was a fun night. We do Halloween at our house. We set up my telescope in the driveway, and we give the kids and their parents a look through the telescope along with their Halloween treat. We've done Memorial Park several times this year. This night, we were 10 volunteers with 6 telescopes. Most of the people in those photos, and especially the children, would never get a chance to see the wonders of the night sky if it wasn't for us and others like us who are willing to go out and share with the public. That's one of the reasons why we do outreach. So if you've never done outreach before, please join us. If you don't feel comfortable taking a telescope, that's perfectly fine. Just come out and see what we do. See how easy it is. And I've got to warn you, it is addictive. You get so much more out of it than what you put into it. And one last slide. Here's Jim King with his setup over here. But what I want you to look at is this little boy's face. He had just looked through a telescope for the first time. He'd seen Jupiter and its moon, and he was so excited, he could barely get the words out. The feeling that you get when you see this kind of a reaction from a child just says it all. And that's why we do outreach. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Amelia. And thanks for those photos. It brings back a flood of memories. Many of these events that I was able to thankfully share with you and Steve and others here within the club. I remember that Ravens Tower event fondly, like it was yesterday. And one of the interesting things is if you're at a bar doing outreach, some people do tend to get a little drunk before they get up there. And I remember having a great time telling people that the American flag on top of the AIG building that we were pointing my telescope to was the flag on the moon. And some people believed it, but we'd have to tell them, no, we're just joking. That's not really the flag. But it's always been an honor to do these outreach events with you, Amelia. I know we've done events as small as, a half dozen people. We've also done electronic dance music festivals that had over 10,000 people there as well, and everything in between. And it's every one of them has been fulfilling. Every one of them has been an absolute blast and a joy. And like you said, seeing the look on this kid's face is exactly why we do it. So thank you, Amelia.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'd like to introduce Jeff Lepp. You heard the introduction earlier. Jeff is the president of the Fort Bend Astronomy Club. However, I like to say, more importantly, he's a member of the Houston Astronomical Society. So, Jeff,
I am.
Yes. So, Jeff, I'd like to hand it over to you. You should have control of the slides. Feel free to advance, and if you need anything from me, let me know.
Sure. Well, first I want to say it's awful tough to follow Amelia. Her presentation is so great, so that puts a lot of pressure on me. But
no pressure, Jeff. No pressure.
also want to thank Don Sully for inviting me here tonight. I know Don and I, we talk a lot of astrophotography, and I guess he caught wind that I do outreach, and I think that was with virtual TSP. I guess he found that out. So I do appreciate Don inviting me out here tonight. And I also want to thank Joe Califf for being what I think is an excellent role model. I've just recently become president of Fort Bend Astronomy Club, and I'm beginning to realize how difficult position that is, being the president of a club. And I've always admired Joe Califf and the job that he's done at HAS, and hope that I can kind of do similar. So thank you, Joe.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, so getting my presentation here. So I kind of want to just talk about my personal outreach journey. I've been doing it now for about 10, 11 years, and at various events similar to what Amelia was talking about at schools and also at the Georgia Observatory. So, but everybody needs a good origin story, right? So here's mine. So as Don Sully mentioned, I'd bought my telescope in 2011 during the great drought when the skies were so clear. And started getting a little bit into astrophotography. But then there was this thing called the Venus transit that happened in 2012. And I thought, well, maybe I should, take my scope to work and show some of my coworkers. Well, it's one thing showing people that you're never going to see again, or doing outreach for people you're never going to see again, but people you're going to see every day, that's some pressure there. So I don't want to make a fool out of myself in front of my coworkers. So the Venus transit happened around, I think, 5 o'clock when people were going home. So I only snagged about 5 of my coworkers, set up in the driveway there at my office, and pointed it to the west. And then a UPS driver showed up. So I was able to actually show somebody who was actually a member of my office. So that was kind of cool. So what I did was of course, I had a solar filter, but I put my iPhone 4 that you see there in the center on a bracket and clamped to an eyepiece using eyepiece projection. And I recorded a little video, and you can see the results of a short stack here to the left of the actual Venus. You can see Venus over there. I'm not sure if I click on it, it's going to do anything, but no, you can see the little round circle of Venus there in the sunspot. So I thought that was a very cool event. Thank you, Joe. Yep. Was a very cool event. Again, Joe had mentioned he was nervous at his first outreach event. I was pretty nervous here because, I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of my coworkers, but I'd also built, if you look at the bottom of my job, there's an equatorial platform there. That's actually a home-built equatorial platform that I built to do the tracking so that I could, put the iPhone on there, and it tracked well enough to actually, keep the sun, within the iPhone. So I thought that was kind of cool. So that was a combination of my astrophotography and my outreach. So go next slide here. So in 2013, I joined the Fort Bend Astronomy Club. And if anybody knows anything about the Fort Bend Astronomy Club, is they're heavily outreach focused. I didn't actually join the club to do outreach. As Don mentioned, I was getting into astrophotography, and I was seeking like-minded folks. And then, they had a lot of good presentations at FBAC about the outreach that they did. And since I had already done an outreach event of my own before I joined the club, I decided to go to one of the club's Astronomy on Wheels event at Garcia Middle School, which actually was close to my house. So it was convenient for me. And it was also, I believe, the polling place at the time I went to. So I was familiar with the school a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture from that event, but I do have a picture. One of my favorite pictures is the one below from Colony Meadows Elementary School back in 2016. And this was a fairly largely attended event, not only by the students, but by the volunteers. I think we had about 10 or 11 scopes set up. And
sorry about that.
And somewhere left of center, you'll see a pink telescope. So Amelia even made it into my slides as well, Amelia and Steve. So I'm somewhere in the back standing there trying to figure out where the heck I'm going to set up my scope because of all these people all the members that joined for this event. So it's really awesome when you have an event where you have a lot of volunteers attend and you get to meet a lot of people and make a lot of friendships. So outreach is not only about sharing our experience and our scope, but also meeting folks, meeting good people. And unfortunately, some have passed away, like on the left, Sim Pinchalope, who is famous for his Bino chair, passed away a few years back. He's a really great guy. I got to know him a little bit at the outreach events. So I've lost a few friends, but I've made a lot of good friends during outreach events. All right. At about the same time, I started going out to the George Observatory for FBAC. And so there's basically two ways to get there. The George Observatory, you can see, is down below in the map. You can go, if you live out on the west side of town, you go down 59 and then exit Crab River Road and then go FM 762 is this windy little road that goes out to Brazos Bend State Park. Or if you live kind of in the central eastern side of town, you go down 288 and then hook over 1462 is a straight shot to Brazos Bend. So it's not too bad to get to. It's about a Bortle. I'd say it's getting towards a 6 now. It's maybe 5.5, so it's not as dark as the HAS dark site, but it is still dark enough to see the Milky Way on a clear night when there's not a whole lot of haze out there. So it's Milky Way is kind of a former shadow of itself, but you can still kind of make it out. So the George Observatory itself is composed of 3 domes: the East Dome, the Research Dome, and the West Dome, and I'll go into the scopes that are in there on the next slide. But there's also a nice big deck area where we set up deck scopes. So I've set up my own scope there. The George Observatory has scopes that you can use if you don't have a scope, or you can train to be certified on the actual dome scopes, go through a certification process and then become an operator, or you can just help out with the crowd control. So there's a lot of different things that you can do at the George. So the scopes themselves, the East Dome, which is where I hang out, has an 18-inch Newtonian in it. It's been in there about 30 years, and FBAC's in the process. We're actually we have a fundraising going on to replace that scope. But this is a scope we've had for a while. It's done a lot of great things. It's an awesome scope. It's an f4.5, and it's the same scope that Joe Dellinger used to discover all his asteroids. If you've ever seen Joe Dellinger's asteroid presentation, it's really great. And this is the scope that he used. Then in the Research Dome, we have the 36-inch classic Cassegrain. And I think we originally called it an RC, but Tracy Nouse corrected me. It is a classic Cassegrain that the Museum of Natural Science, which owns and operates the George Observatory, purchased from Louisiana State University. And so basically they moved the scope from one swamp to another swamp. And then in the West Dome was where David Haviland likes to hang out, is the 14-inch Schmidt Cassegrain. And you can see there's a solar scope on top. They have a little camera that they use to project the image of the sun down below when the public comes in the building down below. They have a TV screen that they use projected. So those are the 3 main scopes. And so since I mentioned I hang out in East Dome a lot, we have 3 different configurations. Prior to COVID, we were all visual. And you can see there's our model there, Chris Morissette, who you all know, likes to come out and help out a lot, volunteers a lot out at the George and the East Dome. And so we were primarily visual, even though that we did do research like asteroid research and so forth with expensive CCD cameras. But for the public viewings, we were all visual. Then COVID came along and the George was shut down for a while. And when we reopened, only with cameras for social distancing. And as Don Sully mentioned, I helped out quite a bit. I used my astrophotography skills to actually help get EAA going at the George Observatory. And so the EAA configuration that we have is we put a camera at the eyepiece, where the eyepiece is at. And then we make our little piggyback teleview refractor into a guide scope. So there's a little guide camera there. The mount, unfortunately, is rather old and has some tracking issues. So even though we take very short exposures, we still need to guide. So generally we do about 10 seconds. We've gone as long as 30-second exposures. Recently, one of our members, Bill Blanchon, who is also a big contributor to PIX Insight, Satellite Image Processing donated a coma corrector that is also a 0.75 reducer. So it takes it down from an f4.5 to an f3.3. So very, very fast scope. So it's pretty awesome. And then, recently we've had people commenting. They say, well, I want to look through the scope. And what we've learned is when people come out to the George Observatory, they really want to look through a scope. There's nothing like having the photons actually hitting your eyeballs. So what's been fairly successful is we've gone to a hybrid approach where we put the camera on the back of the refractor, which happens to be a Teleview NP101 IS, which is kind of a shame to use it just as a guide scope. So we're actually now using it as a real imaging scope. And then we stick an eyepiece in the focuser of the 18-inch. And so what we do for hybrid mode is when we slew to a target, we do a quick live stack on an object. Okay. And we don't have to do an elaborate, what we're trying to do is kind of simulate or get close to what somebody would actually see through the eyepiece. But as it turns out, we can actually show much more detail still with the 4-inch refractor than generally a lot of times you can see through the eyepiece on the 18, just because of the light pollution that's out there. Like in galaxy season, galaxies can be picked up so much easier by the camera than through the eye, because the sky glow just washes out the faint areas of the galaxy. But it's kind of cool, and we have a TV outside that we project our image so that people coming into the dome can see on the TV what they're going to look at in the eyepiece, and they can get a good comparison of the differences of imaging versus visual observing, in the sense that imaging, you can bring out some more details with imaging. You see more details in light pollution, and the other big difference is color. Because the human eye, one of the big analogies that I like to give during outreach is why we can't see color at night with our eyes. And basically, the example I give is when you look out at a poorly lit street, what color are the cars? You really can't tell. Red is gray, yellow, white, like the old Moody Blues song. And that's just because we're daytime animals and we don't have we have got rods to see night vision, cones for the color. We don't have the cones to see color in the darkness. And it's the same way when we look through a telescope. So when we explain it like that, people understand. And plus, when we show the differences between image, what you get with EA and what you can get visually, this has been highly successful. People really enjoy that aspect of it. So, but our operators, we got some operators that like to do EAA that aren't as visually skilled, so they stick with EAA. We got some that are pure visual, and then I've gone to more of a hybrid mode when I operate the East Dome. So, volunteering at the George, all club members in the Houston area support the George Observatory. So I know that a good many are from FBAC, but there's also a lot from HAS, and a lot of our FBAC members are also HAS members. Liz Prochnow is one, and so is Chris Morissette. And we even get people down from the North Houston Club and even from the Johnson Space Center Club as well. Primary nights are Saturday nights. The public currently buys tickets online, and they limit the public to 75 per hour, which is nice because in the past it used to be a free for all. However many people showed up is how many people came through the dome, and at the end of the night, after getting 300 people through the dome, you were completely exhausted, and it didn't leave much time to talk to people, and some people like to look longer and so forth. But with this limit of 75 per hour, it's made it much more enjoyable to interact with the public. Daylight savings time, they only have 2 hours, 9 p.m. to 11, and then standard time they go for 3 hours, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. when it gets darker earlier. They're open for other events, special events, meteor showers, eclipses. They're going to be open, or actually the George isn't going to be open on April 8th, but the Houston Museum of Natural Science at Sugar Land is. And if anybody is sticking around in town and wants to do some volunteering or outreach, you can contact Hannah Lang, who I've put her email address down here below. She's also the contact for volunteering at the George. One of the benefits of volunteering at the George is you can earn an HMNS membership. which is kind of cool because I went to the main museum here not too long ago and got discount tickets, got free parking because I was a member of HMNS through volunteering. I think it's something like 40 hours or more. You can earn an actual HMNS membership, and one of our members actually upgraded for a family membership, so he was able to get a discount on a family upgrade as well. So there's benefits to volunteering at the George. And finally, my final slide, my main point is outreach is fun. And you never know who's going to show up to look through your scope. So when I was out earlier, I think it was in the spring at the Brazos-Bend Expo, which is not related to the HMNS, but is a separate thing that Brazos-Bend State Park does. I set up my scopes with solar configuration, and the mascot, Orion, the space dog from the Space Cowboys, came by and took a photo op looking through one of my scopes, my little 3-inch Astrotech refractor. So that was kind of cool. I was also volunteering at the 2023 annular solar eclipse at the George Observatory, and you can see the long line waiting to look through my scope. So I've got my little solar filter on there, and so had a wonderful time. I didn't actually travel to see the annular, but I decided to, since I stuck around, to volunteer at the George and had a great time. And then I always enjoy taking a walk around Creekfield Lake Trail. It's a little trail that walks around the lake there, and that's near the George, and you can always see wildlife. Of course, the Brazos-Bend State Park is famous for their alligators, and they've got all sorts of other wildlife, deer and armadillos, and at night I see owls and all sorts of critters. So it's if you're a wildlife person, it's also enjoyable to go there to see that as well. So thank you very much. That's my presentation.
I just want to add, in the George Observatory, from April, May, June, July, August, and September, they have a VIP stargazing program. Is $100 for members and $75 for members and $100 for non-members. It's from 9 to 12, 4 to 5 times a year. It's canceled if there is a rain or cloud. I attended a couple of them. It was 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Sometimes it go to 1 o'clock in the morning. It's awesome. I learned a lot as a novice visual astronomer. I just want to add it on.
Appreciate that. Yeah. And no, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Jeff. Great story. Really love the origin story there. I think many of us can relate to that. And I look forward to being able to actually do outreach with you here in the future. So really appreciate your story and sharing this with everybody else there. And please send us information about contributing to the restoration of the telescope or the upgrades of the telescope. As you mentioned, that is an instrument that, regardless of what club you're in, many of us have seen through, volunteered to operate, and have certainly enjoyed. So I think
sure. We've got it on. We've now put it up on our website. There's a link to it I can send you, and our goal is 51,000, and we've already raised close to 14,000 just from selling our own scopes that were donated to the club, and for member donations and club member donations and matching donations from employers that donate for our volunteer hours. So it's amazing what we've raised. But come 2024, we're going to hit, try to go for some big donors to try to hit that 51K as quickly as we can.
Wonderful. And the website is fbac.org.
Yes. Yeah. There's a big display on there. You click on it, and it tells you how to donate through PayPal or Zelle. So
perfect. Thank you so much. And you mentioned Hannah as well. If you're subscribed to our AstroList email server, you will routinely see emails from Hannah about the volunteers that they're looking for pretty much every week that they're out there. So if you're interested in volunteering at the George Observatory, take a look at those emails, look for those emails. I believe there's a background check process that needs to be done, but once you go through that, you have the opportunity to come out, bring your telescopes, volunteer in the dome if you go through the training, and just another opportunity to do outreach. So thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
So I have a question. Which sky is darker, the dark side in Columbus or George Observatory on a bottle scale? Yeah,
I believe, Jeff, you said that the Brazos-Bend area is about a 5 now on the bottle scale?
It's about, I would say about 5.5. It's between a 5 and a 6. Depending on what night.
Yeah.
How about Columbus dark side?
4, I think. Is it 4?
It's between 3 and 4. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And we will finish off with Don Adams' presentation. So as Don Sully had mentioned, Don Adams is a relatively new member of HAS, saw what we were doing with outreach, came out to a few of the events that we had at Memorial Park. I think got the bug just like we all do, and started an event out at John Paul Landing Park, which has become wildly successful. And so Don is going to talk to us about his travels through outreach and all the wonderful things that he's been doing there as well. So Don, please take it away.
Okay, can you hear me now, or do I need to hold down the space bar?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Well, I too have to thank Joe for getting me involved. I followed him, and on Discord, he was posting about the thing at Memorial Park, and so well, hey, I'll just go out there and try that, and I did, and I had a blast. And Joe was so supportive of what we were doing and everything. So my story is kind of unusual. It was a case where we stumbled into a really great situation. My wife and I, about 2.5 years ago, were voting. We're going to look for a place to vote. And we thought, well, let's go somewhere out, kind of in the country that there'll be a lot less people there. And so we saw John Paul Landing Park had a place out there where they were having votes. Hey, that's a perfect place. And when we got there and pulled into a full parking lot with a line out the door, we realized, well, maybe this wasn't the best idea, but hey, whatever. And so we got in line and we went in and voted. And this is the location of the Environmental Education Center. And we went through those main doors in the center and got in line with everybody else. And to the right, after you go through those doors, is a big meeting room. And that's where the voting was taking place, where they had all the machines set up in there. And we went in and voted. And we were familiar with John Paul Landing Park because we'd been out there. It's been under construction. It's still under construction now. It's not completed. It's over 850 acres located out there. And so we looked at it and I thought, well, this is kind of out in the country. It's not bad at all for astronomy. And so we voted and we walked out and I said, just a minute, I want to go back in there and talk to him. And I walked in there and asked if there was somebody that worked with the park there that I could talk to. And sure enough, there's a lady there named Megan Ogren. And she just happened to be the naturalist in charge of this center. And I explained to her who I was. I was a member of the Houston Astronomical Society and said, this would be a great place to have an event out here and host. And, we could set up telescopes out here and show up for people. And she said, oh, that would be awesome. She was all for it 100%. And she said, come here, I want to show you something. She took me into her office and there was a CGXL mount and a Celestron 9.25-inch SCT. So there said, this is ours. We own this. And I brought it with me when I came to this center, and we want to use it. And I said, oh, wow, let's go, And so we decided, okay, let's sit down and walk through it. And, this is something I need to approach Haas with to let them know. And so I called Joe and I got in contact with Joe and said, hey, Joe, we've got an opportunity out here. And he said, oh, go for it. And I thought, huh? What do you mean go for it? I mean, this is for Haas. I mean, me? And, I'm a new member and all. And so he said, yeah, you can do it. So I said, okay, I'll try. So we went out and we sat down and Megan and I sat down and we started talking about, well, how can we do this? And what about the time feature and all that? And so we started up and said, okay, let's set the first meeting in January. And since the Memorial Park kind of went before the new moon, we said we'd go after the new moon. And so we set our dates to the closest quarter right after the new moon. And so January rolled around and I put out the pleas to Haas and, hey, yeah, we need people, telescopes, come on out to John Paul Landing. We're starting a new event out here and y'all come on out and join us. So the night came out and I pulled out there, set up my telescope, and we actually set it up in the parking lot. And the parking lot, let's see if I've got it here on the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so here's the environmental center. And so this area right here on the right-hand side of the parking lot is where we set up. And I set up my telescope right there in that little walkway. And then we waited. And the thing about the way that the park works is people are required to sign up to participate in the event. And they had close to 100 people signed up for this event. And there I was with my one telescope, and another house member showed up. And we had 3 house members and 1 telescope. And 100 people showed up. So it was an interesting night of showing people the moon was the main target we had. And I had my little 8-inch Newtonian, and the people loved it. I mean, people were walking down these walking trails, and they would walk over and join us. And there was some kid that came up, and this one kid, he just kept getting in line and getting in line. And he was just flabbergasted, a high school age kid. And so, I mean, that kept me hooked from that. So what happened next is the problem with this site, if I can, is my arrow showing, Joe?
It is not, but I can.
Okay, down here at the bottom in this little square, yeah, right there. That's a light, and there's another light fixture over here to the left, and they have control of it. So Megan turned those lights off. So we didn't have the lights problem at all, except behind this, on the other side of the lake, is 2 playgrounds, and they have huge lights. And then there's one behind and to the left, at the bottom left. There's another one off just down the road. So those were kind of distracting to us. And so I talked to Megan, and I said, I want to come out here at night and look out the back. And so I went back out here, and it was so much better because, number one, this building blocks off all the light that we were having problems with. This area on the left, the road over here on the left side, to the left of that road, that's a hill. It's an elevation there that blocks off all the light from the west. So the only thing open is the east side, and of course that's Houston, but that's the light pollution that we're faced with anyway. So it looked great, and so I talked to Megan and said, yeah. So we did that. And so we started parking up here, and we walked down here. This is about 100 yards to go down and set up our telescope. And that worked for 2 nights. I think I know Amelia came when George came down, and they walked that walk, so they know how far it was. And so I talked to Megan and said, is there any chance we can drive down there? Because the sheriff's office drive down here at closing time and circle through here. And they said, sure, we can do that. So now we can drive down here and set up right next to our vehicles. The last time, we didn't even have to take our vehicles out. We could stay parked down here. There's plenty of room down here to set up and all. So and also for the visitors, and this is something that happened, a change that happened. You know, this has been a learning situation for us and the park, is that Megan was eventually told by the park supervisor and all that, it's great that Haas is coming out there, but, part of your job description more or less says that you are to be involved in attracting people to this park and getting them here. And having Haas set up and do their thing, you're not really directly involved in. So she wanted to get it more involved, and she loves piloting. She loves fell in love with what we're doing with the astronomy and all. And so she has now taken over doing programs. They do a program in that meeting room before our observation session, and they've taken full charge of that. She asked me to do a program on the solar eclipse that happened, and so I did a program on that. But otherwise, they're doing it, and they do it as an activity type thing for kids. They have posters and things to work on and little projects like that. And it's really good because they're actively involved in it, not only just watching us and helping us set up and do everything, but they're actually doing things themselves. Okay, and so this has been going great. And our only problem, just like everybody's problem, was cloudy skies. Every night we had an event scheduled, but it got cloudy. Or one night they had the heat warnings out and warned everybody to stay in out of the heat. So, but we're slowly working around that, and hopefully we'll do the programs inside, even if we do have to call off the outside. Okay, so just a quick, one of the things that I found out is, I'll take lots of pictures. Well, I get so involved when it kicks out. When we spend time setting up, let me just slip to the next slide. with the 2 slides. This is that first night when I sat up here by myself. And this was a couple of months ago when there's Amelia and George with the pink telescope. And we had other people set up. And this is the, down in the bottom left corner, the van parked back there and the telescope being set up back there. That's the telescope that belongs to the park. That's the 9¼ inch telescope. Okay, so anyway, we're doing all of this, and this sign in the center, due to tonight's astronomy program, parking lot lights, it's just a warning telling people, hey, the parking lot's going to be dark tonight until after the program, then they'll turn the lights on. Okay, so this is what we're doing now is we're setting up, and the people are there. They're inside the building now, involved in the program. It's being put on by the staff at the Megan, the center. Okay, now then, here's what's happened recently and what we're looking for now that this year is about over and what we've learned. Megan has been transferred, and she's been moved over to the Kleb Woods Nature Preserve up in Cyprus. And she's working up there. And she contacted me not too long ago, last month, and said, I want to start an astronomy program up here too. And so she said, is there any way we can do this? I said, well, of course, by all means. And so she talked to people and in the neighborhood, and I contacted Haas. Most of my communication takes place through Discord. If you look at the outreach there, you'll see a lot of posts from me because that's where I communicate. And I also try to post on Facebook as well. But the plea I said is we've got an opportunity at Clevewood to have another outreach program going. And is there anybody that would help out with that? And Matt Burt, where do I have it? Matt Burlage stepped up and said, I will do it. I live across the street from that park. So that worked out really convenient. So he's taken over that. I got an email from Megan yesterday. She's going to do 2 programs this first year, one in January and one in March. And I'm sure Matt will be putting out information on that soon as all their plans get finalized. The plans for John Paul, we've learned we're going to try to do more with the indoor programs as well as the outdoor visitation. The most telescopes we ever had on one night was, I think, 10. Most of the time we have between 4 and 6, something like that. After that first night of 1, it grew after that. So like I say, the next year we've got the first 4 dates posted. I'll put that on Discord already, and I'll post it on Facebook also. And it's still basically the first quarter after the new moon that we're shooting for dates on Saturday. And we also don't conflict with holidays. If we get into conflict with holiday, we shift it up or back, whichever one works best. So the opportunities for next year, wow. I mean, I think the opportunities here, the sign-up list continually has 60 to 100 people signed up for these events. And so the people are there. We just want to make sure we give them the opportunity to take a look. Okay. And the last slide I had here was showing the Klebswood Nature Preserve. And this is the area it's going to be. It's completely surrounded by woods. It's not a big clearing, but it is big enough. And Matt has posted a little information on it. And I'm looking forward to it. I'll be out there that first night to have it too. And so as a closer for you, this is the locations that we've talked about tonight. Memorial Park here in the center of the city, and then John Paul Landing out here to the west, and just to the north of that is the Klebs Nature Preserve, and the George Observatory way down to the south. And then I missed the League City site, but it's off to the right over there. I think I cut it off or something out there, but and then of course far to the west, the dark side area, somewhere in the vicinity of Columbus. We have outreach available, and I would just reemphasize what everybody else has said. I mean, until you experience it, you really don't understand. I mean, when you see the kids come up and the adults too that have never had the opportunity to take a peek through that telescope and see for the first time. It's amazing. And to have a 10-year-old kids come up to you and start reciting all the names of the moons of Jupiter and all of that, and I don't even know beyond the first four, maybe. And so it's an exciting thing to do. And wow, I just encourage everybody to get involved if you get the opportunity. Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it, Don. Thank you so much. And like you said, you approached me with so much enthusiasm about this event when it was getting started. And I just said, yeah, go for it, right? It was something that there was no way we were not going to do something at John Paul Landing Park, given your enthusiasm for it and everything that you told me that the park was willing to do to participate with us as partners. So I really appreciate everything that you've done to make this event a success, starting off from nothing and expanding this, beyond just John Paul Landing out in Kleb Woods, and we'll see where it goes from there. So appreciate everything that you've done, Don. Thank you so much. All right. Well, I believe, Dan, that you've got a few things that you wanted to wrap up with.
Yeah, it's going to be indeed pretty quick to wrap it up. First, please plan. It's very embarrassing when you show up and 200 people are waiting and you forgot the eyepieces. Happened to me. So an equipment checklist can be a good thing. Also, check the weather. Now, I told you that we never cancel, but still, it doesn't hurt to start Stellarium and at least have a look at what the kids and the people will be able to see. Double check the directions. I'm terrible at it. I never know where exactly I'm going. And I hate my telephone, so I always have my wife there to call the people to say, hey, we are lost. And enter the point of contact in your cell phone. That can be very useful. Next. Spread the word, and that is something that our friend Don Adams has done so masterfully. Spread the word by enticing the people. You are, in particular, we at AITP are blessed with the support of the park services of Lake City, and Don over there has done even much better by having people so excited by this that night is blossoming at your places. That is fantastic, Don. Absolutely fantastic. Of course, you have to tell other astronomers, and we have that in the list that we use. And also check the potential audiences, which is what we do thanks to the park services. Next. Be patient. Okay, I was telling you we never cancel, and sometimes when it is raining, only a few people are showing up, 2, maybe 5. But it is a wonderful opportunity to really have a much deeper interaction with people. And yes, there will be some very naive questions. Be patient, okay? As you know, we only understand 5% of what we're looking at from our telescope. So we have to be a little bit humble when we talk to people who have never been exposed to any kind of scientific inquiry. And please, if somebody tries to help you, tell them we appreciate. We had a kid at some point. How old was it?
9-year-old.
9-year-old kid. And, we are overwhelmed with a lot of people. And the kid starting to help us because I had brought over computers. And so I was demonstrating Stellarium and Moon Atlas. And poor Rebecca here was left handling
with 3 telescopes. So I told him, you give me my little helper. And he was in there. Every single month he was there.
Wow. It was wonderful. And so, of course, the other side of it, I had a bad experience with another club where the king of outreach basically insulted me, and I had never done anything with this guy ever again. So anyway, appreciate helpers, and when you are ready to pack, make sure that you get yourself plenty of time because it takes time to set up. But here in Lake City, they close the park at 10 p.m.
Yeah, 9:30 we have to pack.
9:30 we have to pack. And so sometimes I just in the bag and I spend most of the Sunday morning trying to figure it out. Well, thank you guys. I think it was a wonderful panel. We have seen the enthusiasm. We have seen the result. Yesterday, Don Adams has obtained outstanding results. And, it doesn't have to come from me, from Don, from Jeff, or even from Stephen now. You always, by the way, do this kind of stuff in your backyard, and that's perfectly okay. You don't need some kind of king to tell you what to do. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you to everybody else who was part of the panel tonight. Jeff, Don, Amelia, really appreciate everything that you've done to help kind of spread the word, as you said here, Dan. So this is absolutely wonderful. And the one thing I would leave everybody with is, as I mentioned earlier, when I first started with outreach, I didn't know anything about outreach, right? I was a little bit nervous. But, here I am, this grown man, nervous about bringing a telescope to share with Girl Scouts, right? And what I found quickly is you don't have to know everything. You don't really have to know much. I figured I can point my telescope to the moon, and when people ask what we were looking at, I'd say it's the moon. And that's all I had to do, right? You don't even have to bring a telescope sometimes. If you want to come out and help out, we will let you commandeer our telescopes and interact with the public. The other thing is, as you mentioned, Dan, I think this is really a key. When you say be patient, be indulgent with naive questions, absolutely. I've had people wait in line for 20 minutes to get a glimpse through the eyepiece, and then they feel rushed to look and then move on to the next thing. And I'll tell people, no, hold on, wait. Can you tell me what you saw through the eyepiece? And it gives them an opportunity to really go in and take a look and maybe discover something that they didn't get a chance to see in that few seconds that they were looking in there initially. So I think it's the biggest disservice that we could do to people who are coming out for these outreach events if we try to rush them through the eyepieces. So with that, it's absolutely critical that we have as many people as we can possibly get to make sure that the lines don't queue up to 20 minutes long. So anytime you can come out and join us for one of these outreach events, we would certainly appreciate it. And as I mentioned earlier, we have one tomorrow night at League City with Dan, Roy, and Rebecca. And Don, if I can't remember the date, was it the 16th of December? This is the Saturday, the 16th, that you're going to be out at John Paul Landing Park. So try to make it out to one, if not both of these events. I think it will be an absolutely game changer for you. You will love it. You'll fall in love with it. You will want to do it again as quickly as possible. So appreciate everybody helping out with that, and the panel for sharing everything that they have with us tonight. So Bill Spitzieri, I know you sent me a message. I think you had a comment that you wanted to make.
Yeah, I'd like to. Thank you, Joe. I'd like to make some quick comments here, and I'm going to make them as quick as I can. First of all, I've been out to John Paul. It was last year or whatever. The location and the event was absolutely fantastic. So I have to tip my hat to Don on that. It worked really, really great. I was pleasantly surprised. It was really great. But my comments are that the people you heard talking tonight, in my opinion, are superstars in terms of doing outreach in this area. Okay. What they do is just very high quality and very effective. And when I say effective, I mean in bestowing astronomy interest and information to the public. Okay. They have tried to explain that they do that, but I'm telling you, I've seen it firsthand, and they really do an absolute fantastic job of it. I started doing outreach 42 years ago in 1981. Okay. I was up in Chicago and doing telescope outreach at various locations. And I got so discouraged because of the amount of times I was clouded out. It was Chicago, okay? We export clouds to St. Louis. We have so much. Okay? And so I moved indoors. I got the information that people really wanted information. So I started to do indoor presentations. I have since done it up there in Chicago with FBAC, with HAS, with the Austin Astronomy Club. I was living down there for a few years. And so I do astronomy presentations. I go to schools, scouting groups, community centers. I still do telescope stuff on occasion, but mostly I do the inside stuff. And, she mentioned that she had kept a journal. I didn't really keep a journal as such, but I just recorded all the places and the presentations that I've given. I've had hundreds of them if I remembered them all. Okay, and so I've done this a lot. And so, like I said, the telescope stuff, the outdoor stuff that they're doing is fantastic. However, I like to do mostly the indoor stuff. If anybody ever needs an indoor presentation, have your people call my people, and I'd be happy to be involved in that. Okay. I think someone, maybe it was Don, was saying that the organization he was working with might be interested in that. So I'm interested in doing that if anyone is also interested. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
That's absolutely wonderful. And anybody who's had the opportunity to hear Bill speak should take him up on that offer as quickly as possible. So you're always a wonderful speaker. You're able to distill pretty complex topics into easily digestible pieces. So
Thank you, Joe.
Certainly, yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, with that, I'd like to again thank all of our presenters tonight. The panel. Like I said, I get inspiration for a lot of the outreach events that we do from you. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for helping to be ambassadors for this particular hobby that we all love. And I look forward to being able to participate with you again in the future. So with that, I'd like to wrap up my final meeting as president of the Houston Astronomical Society. I've received several wonderful messages from you all in the meeting chat. Thank you. That means a tremendous amount to me. Like I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just stepping aside and letting the next person do an even better job with the club. So I look forward to continuing being a part of the Houston Astronomical Society and contributing to make it the best club there is in the United States. So I appreciate that. And Stephen will be taking the reins at our next meeting. The general meeting will be Friday, January 5th at 7 o'clock. Hopefully we can start to find a location where we can have some in-person or hybrid meetings at least once a quarter, but that's something that we're currently working on and not having the best of luck, but I think we might have a lead. So until then, I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. Whatever you celebrate this month, I wish you and your family the absolute best. And I hopefully will be able to see you at one of the outreach events that we have going on this month. And if not, we'll see you at January's meetings. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joe.
Good night. Thank you.